Welcome to the Diversity Project Pathway podcast. My name is Alexandra Ivanova, and I am a fund manager at Invesco. Through these podcasts, we aim to highlight the journey of female fund managers, highlighting members of our Diversity Project Pathway program, and delve into topics associated with portfolio management. We will be releasing one podcast per month, so please do tune in. We have some exciting topics coming up. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Ghadir Cooper, Global Head of Equities at Barings. And the topics we will be discussing today is her personal journey and resilience, investing, and some current market themes. Ghadir has been in the industry for over 30 years, and I'm sure she has a lot of wisdom to share with our listeners, and maybe give some practical tips on becoming a successful fund manager and a team leader. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
I would love to start by asking you to think about how you ended up in the seat you are and the journey that you had to take all the way from maybe your upbringing, childhood, and how did it all come together?
Let me first say that it was not planned. That's the most important thing about my journey. It feels like lots of random opportunities that presented themselves that led me to where I am, somewhere that I absolutely love and enjoy doing. I started by studying physics at university. I grew up in the Middle East, and I gained a scholarship as an exchange student to Durham University as a second-year student. So that's what brought me to England. I then stayed for another year, and through actually the generosity of Durham University, and I ended up being a graduate of Durham.
Did you speak English
Yes.
when you came here?
Yes. I spoke English like a native. Well, like I'm speaking it now, so I don't think it's improved very much from... I had an American accent, though. Now I have a British accent because I've been here for so long. And then I went back to Jordan for a year, looking for opportunities to further my education. My career path was that I wanted to carry on studying theoretical physics, which was the topic that I was passionate about, and maybe go back and teach in the Middle East. But I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to do a master's degree at Durham. So I went back to Durham to do a master's degree, and halfway through the master's degree, my scholarship evaporated. So I asked University of Durham if there is anything that they can do for me, and I applied for a University of Durham studentship. I got a scholarship, converted the master's to a PhD, and I ended up with a PhD in particle physics. So I think the moral of the story here is that if you really have a goal, follow it. I was lucky because I had a middle-class upbringing that I could actually argue my case, and I managed to get the scholarships. But it's very, very important that if there is something that you're passionate about, what's the worst that can happen? Somebody says no.
Don't take a no as an answer, isn't it? And you did it on your own.
But exactly it. What's the worst they can say is no, so you go for another avenue. Yeah. It's not the worst thing that can happen to you if somebody says no. No is not a rejection for the rest of your life. No is a temporary thing that happens for a minute or two, and you just have to try again. I was lucky in that it worked out. I met my husband when I was doing my PhD, and he's British, and hence the Cooper, and that's why it became important to figure out what to do next. Because if you remember, I said my first career goal was to go back and teach at the university.
And then how did you end up in the city?
Well, I graduated in the middle of the 90s, and if you went to a career advice at a university that time, they either told you to go and do a conversion into law, or to become an accountant, or work in the city. And working in the city was the one that caught my attention. It was not something that was very prevalent in the Middle East. Investing isn't a big career in the Middle East at the time. So for me, it was, oh, that's really exciting. And I applied. The Middle Crowns was happening, and I applied for a job. I actually ended up being on the graduate program of BZW Investment Management. And the reason why I was chosen wasn't because I had a PhD, wasn't because I could do maths. Wasn't none of these things. I was actually recruited because I spoke Arabic and they wanted to launch a Middle East fund.
So that's your specific way into the city, but having a specific language skill that makes it different.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Thank you for highlighting it. It doesn't matter what it is. What the thing that differentiates you from the next person, but that differentiator is something that you need to work on. It could be anything, right? It could be your ability to orate. It could be your ability to solve things. It could be your
technical skills.
Being very mathematically minded. Actually, STEM is a big deal for females. Something I'm really passionate about because I think hopefully the number of females are increasing in STEM subjects, but that's something. I was one of 4 females in my class in physics at Durham at the time I went.
Was it similar ratio in the Middle East?
Yes, very. But actually, there was no change between me being here or being there. But actually, now it's different. So my daughter, who is also a physicist, the ratio in her program is more like a quarter.
Oh, that's progress.
Yeah, that's progress, but that's still a quarter.
Still a quarter. We need to get
so
to
we need
equity.
To get more, especially that the future is, whether it is fund management, whether it is tech, requires a lot of those STEM skills. Don't be despondent though if you're doing something different, if you're doing history or you're doing something which is not STEM, because actually that's what's so beautiful about the fund management industry. You can come from any background and succeed. It depends on your skills. Your ability to do math is clearly important, but your degree isn't as important as people think it is.
Do you think it's math or is it logic?
Both.
Okay.
You're a fixed income manager, right?
I am a fixed income manager.
So therefore it's not just logic, it's maths. But anybody, I mean, if you look at an equity and you read to a stock, a company, and you want to understand what the value of that company is, you need to be able to forecast going forward, and you need to be able to value what you forecast today's price in order to see if the company is worth buying or not. So it's both math and logic. But logic or common sense is key to everything in your life, because that's the thing that you need to kind of emphasize. You need to work on your confidence. You need to back yourself, and you need to be logical, because I think those two are already things that would be able to differentiate you as you get opportunities going forward. So that's how I started. I started being an analyst, doing Middle Eastern equities in emerging markets. I still do fund management in emerging markets. That's what I do. That's my passion, and therefore I kept on doing that. So that's where I started.
So let's go back to being an analyst in emerging markets, and you mentioned you looked at Russia at the time. Tell me about why you ended up there.
I actually started doing the Middle East, and then a couple of years in, I was at BZW Investment Management. Fantastic place, because there were actually some other females that were more senior than me that were doing the jobs that I was doing. One of them was head of EM. I got headhunted to go into Barings, but actually because Barings was then thinking about somebody who covers the Middle East. So I went to Barings again with the hat of being an analyst and doing Middle East. By that time, I joined Barings in 1997. 1998 happened. I was doing Middle East, but then there was nobody that wanted to do an emerging markets that's just broke, which was Russia in 1998. I just put my hand up. There was an opportunity that came about. I don't speak Russian. I don't have any particular background. I got my first job because I spoke Arabic. I didn't get my second job because I spoke Russian. I got my second job because there was an opportunity that came about, and I put my hand up and I said, I will do it. I'm sitting at this desk. I can analyze an equity regardless of where it is. And I did that for a while. So the moral of the story really is, if you find opportunities that are there, back yourself. Again, what's the worst thing that could have happened to me? Somebody who said, okay, you don't speak Russian, really, the job is not yours. Instead, what I got, of course, let's try that out and let's see how it happened, how it works out. And it was fantastic for me.
So it must have been a big and steep learning curve. And did you have fear, or you were so brave? And I think it's admirable to see that someone kind of taking on a big responsibility, something unknown, challenging, but at the same time makes something out of it, a success.
So you asked me earlier before we started the podcast about role models. And I said to you, my mum is my role model. She was one of the first to be educated, females to be educated in her city in Jordan. And she was the first dentist. So for me, that what I did wasn't brave. What she did was brave, because she was starting to do stuff that nobody did. She was willing to take that challenge. She was willing to study, and she was willing to actually be the first female dentist in the village. So for me, that's real fear. That's when you are really trying to do something that nobody's done. A lot of people have done Russia ahead of me and nothing happened to them. And also, what's the worst that could have happened? I would have failed. I could have failed. I worked very, very hard for not to fail, but I could have failed, but I didn't. And that's the thing that I'm trying to instill in a lot of my graduate intake, is that you don't know your limit until you test your limit. It's a bit like children when they're growing up. You have to just tell them that they can do it, and they do it because they rise to the challenge. And in my head, I could do it, so I did it.
And I think it's all about the attitude, isn't it? So you take on the challenge, you have a positive attitude, you're going to make it work. And then if it doesn't for some reason work, you learn a lot of lessons for your next step. Or you make something absolutely yours.
Absolutely. So how I rationalized it is a company is a company is a company. Emerging markets and emerging markets, we had Mexico blow up a few years back, and somebody else will blow up a few years on. So I've done emerging markets. I've seen that happen. Why wouldn't I? So that's how I rationalized it. So for me, it was about, there's an opportunity there. Why don't I step into that role and try and make something out of it? And for me, that's kind of almost an important life skill. During COVID, I learned how to make sourdough.
I know a lot of people did that. I tried.
Yes, exactly. And my first attempt was awful. My second attempt is still alive. So there you go.
Oh, you're still keeping it?
Yes.
In the fridge. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
well done.
So there you go. I'm just saying, it's just a matter of attitude. It's a matter of what you do, when you do it, and priorities. So at the time, I was young. I didn't have children. I was about to have my first child. She was born in 1998. But at the time, it was the hard thing wasn't not to take risk. Because when you get more and more into your career, it becomes much more of what do you risk, what you left behind compared to what you see ahead. So I was an analyst looking at companies, eager to learn. It wasn't scary. Yeah. And my priority at the time was career. And then I had my children. And then you have to think about priorities again.
Of course, let's shift to family and career. And very good segue to how you this challenge that you had with a newborn baby. I think you have 2 children, and you have to take time off, and then you come back. And how do you continue? And what does it look like for you in terms of losing that time, having a pause in your career, but still having your connectivity to forward-looking career in this industry is very difficult, but I want to learn more about that.
So 2 things that worked in my favor, and they were terrible at the time. Our maternity leave was 3 months because I'm of that generation. So therefore, it was actually, I sat down with my husband and we decided, he said, do you want to stop working or do you want to carry on? And I said, I absolutely want to carry on. Again, remember, my mum was carrying on working, right? So for me, my role model, she had babies and she carried on. And then the other thing that was happening at the time is it was really difficult at the time to have a balance between career and working from home and doing all of the stuff that is possible now. So I said, okay, I want to go back. So it was about finding a solution for childcare that is that works.
Yeah.
I was very lucky. Very lucky. My mother-in-law became my children's nanny. She was young. She was in the Middle East as well. Even though she's English, but she wanted to come back and look after my children. I was very fortunate. And that meant that I could do investment trips where I could stay away for a week, do all of the things that wouldn't have been possible if I had a team of nannies. Other people have done it with nannies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying anything else, but for me, it was an easier path than everybody else.
Family member, yeah.
So I have to, therefore, I still remember that time, and I still think that my female fund managers, I need to be able to enable them to carry on with their career. Because at the moment, you can take a year out and then come back to fund management. For me, I wanted my female talent to be able to have that time. You can't take that time back. You're a mother yourself.
Of course, yeah.
And I wanted them to also have the want to come back in a way that doesn't really make them make really difficult choices between work and career. So a lot of my female fund managers came back part-time. Really, their quality of their work hasn't deteriorated at all, but it required some sacrifices from the other team members around them because they're not there all the time. But when they are there, they are working 150%. I mean, you know that.
I know that. And if you do the maths, and
they're really working.
Actually get more out of them per hour, probably.
I think the best investment decisions I've ever made was when I was sleep deprived and coming back as a young mum. So I think quite a lot of it happens. Quite a lot of it, you are able to multitask when you are.
And you know where to focus on.
Yeah,
you don't spend a lot of time prioritizing.
Multitask.
Yeah.
But my idea for me is that actually, 80%, 60%, however time they wanted to come back of that particular female talent is better than not having that female talent. Because guess what? The gap happens even further on in the career. Yeah. Because then you have nobody to feed the senior management roles and the executive. So if you don't look after the female fund managers from that kind of twilight zone from when they have children to when they go to school full time, which is actually not a massive period. We are talking about
4 years.
4 or 5 years. That's the bit where you actually get a lot of sinking. If you look at statistics in the city, I'm sure you are more versed on this than I am, but actually the entry level statistics is very, very equal, or you can make it equal, but you keep on losing female talent as you are progressing in your career because of those priorities being conflicting. Whether it is childcare, sometimes it is even parent care. It's not even having your own family, it's your family being in a way that you can't look after them, or you need to make those compromises. And for me, it was important that I do my bit. Bearings was very much about retaining female talent, and that was what we did. We accepted that we might have a bit of a period of time when those female talents are not working full-time. I have example of where they came back full-time when they were needed because they wanted to be fully, want to re-engage their career fully, but they haven't lost confidence because they were still working.
Of course.
If it is a part-time. They were also, as you said, worked very hard in order to enable themselves to carry on progressing in their career. So they didn't stop at analyst, they didn't stop at fund manager and just sat there during that period. Actually, they also push their career forward, which is important as well, because you can't really just take advantage of the fact that you're just working 3 days a week, I don't need to worry about you. You need to worry about them. You need to keep on getting them, keep their confidence, keep them in the workforce, because at some point when they come back, they are able to go into the next roles and the client-facing roles, very big client-facing roles, managing team, leadership, etc.
So there are still, to my mind, hidden talents that you get uncovered mostly when female employees come back, and you can see that the most productive ones are the ones who are really engaged. They have family, but they know how to balance both life and career at the same time, but on a way that is more elevated, I think.
So I think I could see the shift from when I was working as an analyst and the attitude to female working to now. Because now, which is amazing, very good, very much to be encouraged, the young folks, whether it is female or male, want to do their bit with raising the children. It's not a female role. And that for me is a societal shift. And that should enable that talent to thrive and come back going forward. Because actually, when you are hiring someone and you don't know whether the female talent is going to be the one that's making the decision to stay at home or stay at work, and the male talent might be the decision maker to be the child, the main child, the one who picks them from school if they're ill, whatever. You don't know that anymore. Before, when we started, it was always just assumed it's the mom. That assumption is gone now, and that assumption going now is actually doing quite a lot for the ability for decision makers to think, actually, we don't know whether that guy who is sitting next to that lady, whether it is her or him, are going to be the ones who are going to be taking the primary care. And also, because of flexible working, because of what happened during COVID, where it was very obvious that you can work from home quite successfully, it became much more of an accepted wisdom.
Yeah,
you can go still and go to your child's
Christmas
play
show
or Christmas show, and then come back and log on afterwards from home and finish the day. So that is a positive change that has happened since our time. But yes, of course, any society that doesn't capitalize on all of its resources is missing out on economic growth and on productivity. And therefore, if you are not capitalizing on the female talent that's gone through university, that's gone through all of the training that you've taken them through, because they wanted to go part-time for a bit of time, that is lost earnings for the society as a whole. There's dividends to be had by allowing the female talent to thrive.
Do you think that female talent is different from male talent, or is it? I know that a lot of courses that sometimes we get offered, and it's all about how you present yourself, how you speak, how you improve your confidence. But sometimes I do feel like, do we need to be like that, or can we nurture the female strength, which probably something different? It's a little bit more about being sensible, long-termish, and maybe we can bring it back to fund management. Do you see any difference in attitudes from male and female fund managers?
That's a really difficult question to answer. I've seen studies where the important thing in decision making is to have different points of view being discussed, and then therefore one taken forward because you have seen it from different directions. And I think this is the diversity regardless of what it is. It could be female diversity, it could be socioeconomic, it could be any diversity, it could be race,
ethnic,
it could be anything. And for me that kind of falls within the same spectrum, in that the way that some females approach making solutions, decisions, is different to how some males approach it. And for me, it's about getting a team together that works, that has both the diversity of and inclusion of this kind of different point of view, calm debate, and going forward.
So it's the person.
Yes, exactly. So we need to go past the stereotyping and in looking at the person. Now let's talk about stereotyping, though.
Okay.
I think, the city itself, stereotype, has just changed so much from when I joined in my early in my career to it being now. It's much more about debate and much more about inclusion rather than a single leader who's single-minded, making all the decisions.
Star fund manager.
All of that has changed. So that kind of allowed the female talent to thrive, to be honest, because it didn't have to conform to what was thought of as the look and feel of a fund manager, a successful manager. So the way that success looks like now is different to the way success looked like before. That is different to us, to how you present yourself. I think it is really important that if somebody offers you presentation courses, you take them, because everything is about how you communicate to the person in front of you. So it is enabling you to communicate yourself better to the person in front of you. About debate is a different thing again, because it is very clear that still the same concept can be talked about by a female and a male, and it lands differently in the ears of the audience. You still have that bias in society, and that bias is changing because the society itself is changing. Take all of the help that is offered to you, if it's offered to you, but discard. Be your own self. Discard what you think is superfluous or old-fashioned or whatever. I think you have to always think for yourself. For me, that's the important thing. People will tell you that everything's been hurtled at me. It's been hurtled at you, I'm sure. Yeah. You're too forward. All of these things. Yeah.
But okay, so you have a big team, right? Like you're leading fund managers who are across the world, different nationalities, different gender, whatever. So as a leader, what is it that you can do or you do day to day to bring that up and get to the essence of debate and make sure that everybody is heard on the same level?
Culture. How do you make the culture that allows that to happen? Okay. You lead by example. You also don't want it to become very much about just debate, because decision making is a very important part of fund management. You need to be enough debate that people feel heard, but you need the decision to be made. And it's about enabling the decision makers, but also making sure that it is very important who the responsibility of making that decision lie upon, because you can't also have debate where you confuse who the decision making is. How do you do that? For us, our process is very organized in a way that allows us to, for example, the way we research companies, in a way that allows us to debate them in a particular way, looking at the quality of a company, or talking about the earnings model, talking about the non-financial part of a company, the ESG factors that can affect the company going forward, is organized in a way that allows that debate, because it is within certain parameters. So it's organized debate, and then a decision is made. The other question that you're asking, though, is a different one. If you have different personalities and different, obviously, ethnic biases, societal biases, you just have to understand them. It's taking the time to understand them. It is still, we're a long way to go still, because, you can't stereotype, but you know that a yes from a certain person or a certain ethnic group is different to a yes from a different ethnic group because of the way the society is. So therefore you need to be able to kind of correct for that and take it forward. It's a difficult, it's difficult to put it in words, but basically you correct for what you think is that person's personality, and then take it forward.
But that's a very difficult skill to learn as a leader, because you need to be quite multifaceted and maybe even be international mindset.
Yeah, and actually, from when I started, when HR was about this was nothing, to now where there are diversity inclusion classes, where people actually teach you about biases, explain to you about harassment, all of these things, make everybody's eye open, and also putting the difficult lines of when do you actually talk about things at what time, and understanding that the person in front of you might be wanting to give you a message that you are not hearing. we have HR now that kind of enables us the way that the feedback loops happen are now much, much better. And the best thing is that everywhere now there are whistleblower policies that allow you to call out bad behavior.
Mm-hmm.
The manager, though, that's kind of on the bad behavior. On the good behavior side, this is a bit where you need to teach your managers to allow the talent to thrive.
So there is a concept of being confident in your own self and
Back
having
yourself.
that, backing yourself and making sure that you know your worth and putting that forward, right? So
knowing your worth is a so obviously we all are working in businesses and we all run businesses, and what's really important is to understand your own worth, but your worth to the business as well. So my career was not a straight line career. I didn't go, I'm going to be an analyst, and then a couple of years in, I'm going to be, in the next, in the third one. I actually did quite a lot of random work where I did different. So I told you I started doing Middle East, and I went to do Russia, and then I did EMEA, and then I did different sectors. Then I became head of research for EM. While still doing EMEA, then I became head of equities while still doing EMEA. So it's one of those career paths are always step functions. So you need two things. You need the opportunity. You need to put yourself forward for the opportunity. You also need to always demonstrate that you're ready for that jump. So
for the next step.
You always work at a higher level before your step, because then it makes it easier for your manager to take a leap of faith on you, because you've demonstrated that you can lead, that you have original thought, that you think about portfolio construction, whatever it is that you want to kind of show is your as your particular strength, is something that you've demonstrated and has been part of your if you like, the person that they're hiring for the next step.
So make their job easier by doing the role.
I think so. I think this is one of the things that you act the next level you want to be at. But also recognizing that businesses can't always take you to the next level unless there's an opening for the next level.
Of course, yeah.
So that's another thing whereby you really have to be truthful to yourself, think, okay, where is the next level? And you actually end up losing a lot of talent in 10 years into a business because they are senior enough to want to take the next step, but the people in front of them are still there. So it is a matter of explaining what's happening or giving them different talents. That's why I ended up with the random walk, because I went to the opportunity that was presenting itself.
Yeah. But you ended up where you are today. What are the skills that you've learned through this random walk? And what is it that actually, in your view, was the core of it? Yeah, the thread.
I think it's the thread for me has always been can-do attitude. So if you can do it, you wouldn't put yourself to do it. The other thing I did is something that a lot of people don't really do, is when something isn't your responsibility, your direct responsibility, a lot of people just don't interfere and don't do it. I actually wanted to understand everything about what I was doing, and if there's something that I saw was something that can be sorted, that I can talk to someone, do it better, I would put myself out there, basically, to be criticized, is how you think about it, in order to do it. And that is, I think, is the attitude. You just want to make everything better as you move forward in your career. What's the worst that can happen? They just tell you have forgotten to think about this, and no, that's not the right way to do it. It doesn't kill you. Do you know what I mean? It's always about, okay, can this be done better? If it can be done better, how can I do it better? How can I help somebody do it better? Mm-hmm. How can somebody help me do it better? If somebody comes to suggest for you a way of doing things better, take it. I used to say, I don't care where the investment idea comes from. It can come from anybody in the firm. Mm-hmm. As long as you get that investment idea and you act on it, that's fine, because that's your goal, is to get the portfolio and your clients to do better. The goal is not for your own self-ego.
Of course, yeah. So can we shift towards investing and fund management, taking risk? What kind of fund manager are you? And how do you perceive and take risk?
I am totally active fund manager. So it's all about finding companies that I think are going to be the best companies that you can put in your client portfolio in a risk-aware way. So what you don't want to do is to put a collection of companies together for the region that you're in a way that doesn't respect risk. What does that mean? That means you can be adding to your portfolio unintentional correlation, unintentional risks that basically end up blowing up your investment thesis because conditions have changed. So for us, it's about, and that's the philosophy for the whole of the team, it's about unearthing those ideas that are the best ideas for your client's portfolio, but putting them together in a way that allows you to use your risk budget correctly for the outcome, which is risk-adjusted returns for your clients. It's a bit like playing Tetris. So if you think your companies are the Tetris pieces, you're trying to do is fit it all together in your clients' portfolios so that there is no leakage of risk.
Oh, that's a very good way of visualizing the risk, and I guess it's
you
part
have to
of
take,
yeah.
You have to take risk,
Of
right?
course,
if you don't
yeah.
take risk, you just give the return mediocre returns. And risk sometimes pays off, and sometimes doesn't, because that's very important. When you're taking risk, you're making an investment decision before everything is known about a company.
Yeah.
Because if you invest when everything is known about a company, not when you have a thesis and you want to invest in that investment thesis, when everything is known, the valuations are there.
Of course.
So you don't
yeah.
actually make the returns for your clients. So what you do is you want to act on imperfect information in a way that allows you to buy those companies in a way that doesn't blow up your returns. And sometimes they do, right? If you're an active manager, when value runs and you're a growth manager,
yeah.
or when growth runs and you're a value manager, we're growth at a reasonable price. So you do have periods where
you
the
underperform
market
because
conditions
the
themselves,
yeah.
it is about making sure that you have done everything that you can and actually invested to the investment process, that you can defend the actions that you have done, but always not lose the confidence to put a portfolio together for going forward. It's always forward looking, it's never backward looking, in order to deliver those risk adjusted returns for your clients.
Don't put everything in. Yeah, don't put everything in one basket. All your eggs. Diversify. Be risk aware.
Risk aware. It depends on what you think about diversification.
Yeah.
If the markets are all correlating in the same direction,
anyway,
so regardless
you
of
can
what
talk
diversification you do. But if you are really, what you're trying to do is reduce the factor risk in your portfolio, and the only factor risk that we're allowed to have is growth at reasonable price, right? All of the other, you can have other factor risk, but it has to be intentional factor risk. What we do, to talk about investing, is we build the portfolios through conviction, bottom up, and then we all go and assume the portfolios are efficient, and then back down from that portfolio where the risks are taken using the covariance matrices. And an assumption of what sort of returns the clients want. So it depends on how much you're taking in terms of tracking error, etc. And then you assume a certain information ratio, and then you backward solve your portfolio. And then it could say that, for that tracking error, 30% of that risk is taken by that one company. Well, then you test your conviction. Is that really how you think of that company, or is that just unintended risk? And we minimize the unintended risk, and we keep the intended risk.
Intentional risk. Yeah, that's a lot of... so you've put portfolio construction, analytical skills, and risk management skills all together in one.
Fundamental skills. So I call it the exploration side, is when you are really trying to find out the best ideas, is where you start. Then you've got your clients' requirements. So you build a portfolio to your clients' requirements with their risk tolerance, all of these things, and then you test it through portfolio construction, through this kind of risk
rigorous
process of looking at risk.
Yeah.
And then you you invest for the outcome that is risk-adjusted returns for your clients.
So you started in emerging markets, right? So I always think about investing and investors, say, looking from UK perspective, they tend to be home biased, right? And I don't know, maybe your clients are not, but most people, they prefer to invest in UK equities, maybe European equities. But how do you talk to people who want a better return, but they think emerging markets are too risky.
Okay. I mean, I don't want just to talk about emerging markets. I quite like emerging markets right now, but so our clients aren't. And in fact, if you look at the UK client base and the European client base, they actually buy global equities. They don't just buy home bias. They buy a lot of Asian equities, etc. So I think that kind of idea of investing for diversification is already It's already built in the UK
in the
and the European clients. My clients are global, so I have clients from everywhere. And the home bias for example, somebody in Asia is Asian equities, right? It's
fine.
It's not the same. We share the same process. We do the same work. But if you really want if you really want to invest for the long term, you want to have your long-term returns. The amount of risk that you're taking is based on your expectations for long-term returns. So this is why for me, I think it is important to have an allocation that reflects that. It's been very, very difficult to talk about that, really, for the last few years because of the way the US market has been behaving for the last few years. For good reasons, they had the technological advances there, but it is very driven by very few companies. And for me, the valuations are in such a way now that the difference between an emerging market equity valuation and a US company valuation is so huge. The same with small cap versus large cap. That for me now there's a very big opportunity going forward, particularly as interest rates come down, as people will be encouraged more to take riskier.
And we are in the cutting Federal Reserve and central banks are cutting interest rates. So.
So for me it's quite an exciting time, but also I think China's stimulus program is enough as well. You get the valuations are extremely attractive relative to their long-term history in a lot of emerging markets, not just China. So it's an interesting times.
Yeah, good. I totally agree. I did my asset allocation to Asian equities as well, just given on the valuations. I don't do equities.
By the way, you guys need to, whoever's listening, you have to figure out the timing of this, and this is not advice.
No, it's not an advice.
This is not advice. It's very important. We're just talking about longer term investing and how you would allocate, because you want to take. It depends on what your outcomes are.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe we can wrap it up, and let's say the listeners would be mostly young professionals or young girls who would like to learn more about fund management, and maybe they want one day to become a fund manager. What is your advice to them? What would, from your own experience?
3 things. Don't think you can do it. You can actually do it. The second one is make sure that you do something that you're passionate about doing, and therefore you want to be able to differentiate yourself in a way that allows somebody to see what it is, that kind of X factor about you. And I think that's an important part. It could be anything. It could be your passion for public speaking, as I said before, or it could be really an investing streak that you have done for a long time. It could be just the differentiator. Just show the differentiator, and make sure that you have the literacy that is needed for doing this job, which is mathematical literacy. Don't listen to anyone that tells you that you can't do maths and science, by the way.
That's a very good note to finish on, and absolutely fascinated and inspired by your story. And I'm really happy that you agreed to be a guest on our podcast. And thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing a lot of you, hopefully.
That would be lovely, thank you.
And you've been so reflective on what you have learned and you've seen. And hopefully our listeners will get some practical tips from this, and go change your attitude, look up